Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carl. I'm a recovery coach here at Capital Recovery Center. This is our coffee and conversation meeting for the day. And the article I have here is How We Overcome Trauma. So we'll hop right into it. So some of the key points we have here is when we are traumatized, we always lose something. Similar to grief after a death, trauma recovery involves navigating various stages. The stages include denial, bargaining, depression, anger, and acceptance. So there's a real and intense process of grief when getting over past trauma. It takes time and why skilled therapists or supportive friends are critical for trauma recovery. A lot of the work you will do with will be within yourself. As you fight to comfort and overcome the darkest memories and events in your past, you will be revisiting traumatic episodes and reliving the losses. We must examine the importance of these two words, loss and grief, a bit more, as they are the centerpiece of your healing process pathway back to peace. When we're traumatized, we always lose something. It might be our joy, innocence, happiness, or a sense of dignity. But the loss is real and painful. It's like a death, and it needs to be monitored. When we experience trauma, especially early in life, it is a uniquely painful type of loss. I have worked with many clients who suffered emotional and physical abuse as a child. In many ways, this abuse robbed them of the normal joys in childhood. The others are death of parents, siblings, brought a cloud of sadness into their growing up years. So I think something that we all deal with and we can't escape is, you know, grief and trauma of some sort, and it's like tough to deal with. And like I've learned, like you only can say so much to somebody that who's grieving over a loved one, right? It's like more of being there and the comfort is more act I want to say better than just saying I understand or I'm sorry. That does help, but like just being there for one another is and just listen. That's key. I think key factor is just listening and let somebody vent and talk to you about what's really going on with them. That you get the more better outcome than just saying like I understand or I'm sorry. Um, it definitely helps when somebody's just there for you. It says until we recognize the sadness associated with a loss, we cannot grieve. If loss is a noun in the realm of trauma, grief is a verb. Grief recovery is a active conscious process that we undertake. While recognizing and realizing a loss is the first step in overcoming it, the next step is finding healing is to feel that loss. That process of recognizing and processing the loss is grief. And the best way to like, I think, deal with grief and trauma is like, dealing with it. Because we can't avoid it. That's one thing I've been looking at and working on. It's like I see a lot of times like avoidance. Like if I avoid something, it's only going away for temporary, right? It's still there, but like subconsciously, I would like try to not think about it. But that's not a healthy way to deal with any of our problems or any of the trauma and grief that we're going through. Like we have to open up and like deal with it with, uh, therapists, counselors, peer support, people in recovery, um, family, friends. It doesn't have to be everybody, but it's got to be somebody. And I guess one of the things that why me and a lot of others like use drugs and alcohol is to suppress our emotions and feelings and the trauma and and the grief that we deal with. We just like to use over it, um, and that's just suppressing our emotions and feelings, and we're just making things a lot worse because it just doesn't go away. We're unable to move through the experience of loss. We become stuck. We all know people who are stuck in the past. As the saying goes, almost as if the trauma of the loss placed them in an emotional deep freeze forever. suspended in time, unable to move into the future. Let's consider working through trauma in the context of the popular notion of the 5 stages of grief. We now understand that not everyone who experiences grief will experience all 5 of these stages, and that those who do many not experience them in this order, but it still provides a framework for considering how individuals can manage difficult feelings as they work through recovery from trauma. So when I dealt with some grief and trauma and stuff like that, I did seek a therapist, and I did go over like the 5 stages of grief, and it did help me. Like, even if like sometimes I didn't understand, or like I couldn't comprehend a lot of some of the things, right? It still helped me making that connection with somebody, and going over what I'm feeling and dealing with, and just expressing myself. It does go a long way. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that in a moment, but now I can look at it like it truly did help me. Um, and it's a tough thing to relive some of these experiences, right? Um, it's hard. It brings up negative emotions and feelings. But like, I have to deal with them in a healthy way, because I can't let my emotions, feelings take over, and stay stuck in that. I let the emotions and feelings come, I let them go, and like I let things be. But they all the time, they do arise at times. Like they just doesn't go away, and they stay away. I just choose to do different things this time when I experience these emotions and feelings. Like I don't run to drugs and alcohol, or sex, gambling. There's a lot of other things that deals with not just the drugs and alcohol, like the whole overall aspect of addiction. Obsession and compulsion, it can be anything. I've learned that too in recovery. Like it's just not always about the drugs and alcohol. It will always be, right? But there's other factors that contribute to my addiction. Recovery has taught me my awareness, right? I have a higher level of awareness today than I did before, and I have a better understanding of my addiction. As before, I thought, it was just a, something I did, and it was a part of my life, which is just, it is, but like it goes a lot deeper than I'm just an addict, right? So yeah, I had to really do some work on myself, and one of the processes dealing with grief, because we all are subjected to grief and loss and trauma, because it's part of life, losing people, loved ones, and it changes for everybody, right? Because I look at it as like we all have different relationships with everybody, and some are meaningful more than others, or the way people have passed away. There's a lot of factors for me that brings up some emotions and feelings about different certain people that passed, and different things that I've dealt with trauma also. It just takes work. It takes time. It just doesn't always go away, but I can deal with it a lot better today than I ever did. That's all through the process of recovery, and actually dealing and healing with, like I said, you get with people who are professionals, therapists, counselors, go about the right way than just avoiding and running, and suppressing our emotions and feelings with substance. And it's the denial. Let's go to denial. Number one, denial. When you experience a traumatic event such as the death of a loved one, your survival instincts can kick in. Wow. And your brain may default to fight or flight mode. This process occurs in our midbrain, which the seat of our basic survival instinct and responses. Our brains are built for survival and will do whatever it takes to protect us from life-threatening dangers. In the case of trauma, the same principle is in effect, and our first response may be to protect ourselves by identifying and denying the event. The length of denial stage is often correlated while the intensity of the event. In the worst case of childhood trauma, some events may be suppressed for years. As we grow older, those negative memories may rise to the surface, at which point we must choose whether or not to deal with them. In other cases, memories, even of events that happened decades earlier, are seared into our brains. As much as we are like to forget some events, we simply cannot. Yeah, we can try to forget, and use all types of substance and use outside things and material things to get out of ourselves and not to think on the traumas and grief. And it always arises in one shape or form, and I noticed that now, like through my years of addiction, and like now the process of recovery has shown me like everything's still there when it happened. It still sticks. Some of it still sticks with me today. But like I said, I have better coping skills today. I'm more understanding and aware, and I'm willing to work on these things. As before, I wasn't. I wasn't willing to open up and express my emotions and feelings in a healthy way. It was always out of fear and anger and resentments, and a lot of the character defects that we can talk about in recovery, like, they were very prevalent in my life in active addiction, right? And like, I just didn't want to deal with reality, right? We like to escape reality. If I didn't see it, or like it just didn't happen, we can tell ourselves some kind of things, which is, the insanity of disease of addiction, and it's tough, day to day to deal with certain things, but like, it's a lot easier to live life without trying to fill that void with negative things. Let's see, number 2, bargaining. This stage of grief may be marked by persistence that thoughts about what could have been done to prevent the loss or trauma, because children do not have the brain capacity to process trauma effectively. Bargaining is a common trait, even persisting into adulthood. Whether a child experienced the divorce of their parents, the death of a loved one, or another emotional trauma, they may believe falsely that they're somehow to blame, or they may think that they could have done something to prevent the traumatic event. These types of feelings often persist until adulthood, especially if the traumatic event has not been processed appropriately. Yeah, so like a lot of things we deal with, it talks about like, as a child, and traumas and grief, and if our parents had divorces and stuff like that, that can stick with us, and it talks about we can't comprehend fully what's really going on, right? We don't have a better understanding of really what's going on because we're kids, like our brains are developing, so it comes up in adulthood for sure. It comes with some way or another. If it's as a kid acting out, right? That we need to seek professional help. Like it says, appropriately. It's got to be addressed appropriately. It's just not like not dealing with it. That's not healthy. It's definitely a lot better if you seek professional help and you get the right information that you need so you can deal with this trauma and grief. It's just a lot of stuff does stem from like a young age. I definitely agree with that. But things happen as adult also. But it all has to be addressed and accordingly. It says number 3, depression. Depression is the stage we begin to realize and feel the true extent of the loss or trauma. Arguably, the most difficult stage is the grief process. Depression can set in when we begin to face the full brunt of the trauma we experienced. This is where your friends and loved ones can help you along with a therapist. Let your safe circle or trusted advisors know that you are processing a lot of emotions and need support in the grief journey. So depression. So I see as depression as from the grief and the trauma. It's like we already been through these traumas and these grief losses, right? And like think we can get in these depression stages of like when these negative emotions and feelings come up about these certain events, right? We can get depressed, we feel down because these negative emotions and feelings they arise sometimes, right? And we get stuck in this depression, um, and it doesn't feel too good, And we have to find an outlet to deal with it. And it talks about trusted advisors and therapists in the safe circle, right? Because we need support, we need help when these things, these things come up. Everybody needs help. Everybody needs support. Everybody. A lot of people deal with grief, loss, and traumas. It's definitely a part of life for most of us. And so I have definitely a better outlook on the traumas and the losses that I have today, and like I understand that I don't have to suppress my emotions and feelings anymore. I can like open up and like get vulnerable with selective human beings, right? Like I talked about a safe circle, right? I have people in my life that I can trust and I can open up to, right, without judgment, and they can just listen to me. Sometimes for me, I like, sometimes I don't want feedback, right? I want to just vent. I want to express myself, and somebody just to be there. That helps me a lot more than sometimes I get in feedback, right? So it changes for sure. Let's see here. Number 4, anger. Because anger, this stage usually happens when we feel helpless and powerless. Anger can stem from a feeling of abandonment because of loss. I have found that when people process trauma from the past, it is the anger stage that they become stuck, especially if an individual suffered emotional or physical abuse early in life. Getting past anger can be quite difficult. Processing and following a traumatic event takes courage, wisdom, and time. I would encourage you to take whatever time you need to deal with this issue of anger and bitterness. Surrounding past trauma, often you will need all the help you can get to move beyond this stage. I am not suggesting you dismiss the hardship caused to you by another person, but your ability to forgive releases you from the burden of holding on to past pain and trauma of the event. Forgiving a person who was the source of your trauma does not let them off the hook for their bad behavior. It frees you and leads you to healing. Mm, that's hard. That can be a hard one. Like even, people that caused you trauma and grief and caused you a lot of negative stuff, to forgive them can free you up, right? Can free you of that. Which, and then it talks about, it doesn't let them off the hook. It doesn't mean that's okay of you forgiving them and of the whatever behavior, whatever happened, right? Um, it's for you. It's not for them. To me, right? It frees you up for that. The anger and resentments and frustrations, and because we hold on to that stuff. We sure do. We can hold on to it. It's like putting a book bag on and just throwing bricks in it. Keep throwing brick into a book bag that you're gonna hold on to. It weighs you down. Imagine carrying that around every day, or every other day, whatever day it is. Imagine you still throwing bricks in that book bag. It's just no good. You know, it's baggage. It's an unnecessary baggage that we hold on to. You know, but we're human. You know, we have to forgive and let go and just let things be. It doesn't make it okay, right? But we accept and let go of what happened so we can move forward and live life uh, happy. You know, last one, 5, acceptance. This is the point where we can say, yes, what happened to me was unfair and terrible. What that person did to me was not okay. However, I can come to terms with the event and process it accordingly. It no longer holds me a captive. As I let go of my grief and surrender control over it, I'm now free from it. Yep, accepting letting go. You know, it can be tough. I know that. It can definitely be tough. But I can honestly say it definitely frees you up from negativity. You know, it can free you up from the guilt, the shame, the anger, the fear, frustrations. You know, all the negative stuff we can let go of it any day. You know, but it takes work. It takes time. It takes work. You know, and we got to find a proper, uh, you know, treatment, therapy, counseling. You know, and we have to find the right people and the right things to deal with our traumas and griefs. Um, but we can do it in a healthy way today. You know, we don't have to uh, try to find our solution in substance, right? And living in recovery, find a new way to live. It's a great day to be clean, huh? So that was our coffee and conversation meeting for today, and it's how we overcome trauma. Until next time, my name is Carl, recovery coach here at Capital Recovery Center. Until next time, we'll see you later.